Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Baldwin. This is their part number SC-RSD 481. It is this is a single cylinder deadbolt from the Reserve line. They've got their Estates line that has been around for decades. They had Images that was around for at least a couple of decades. The Reserve line is I'm not an expert when it comes to Reserve or the Images. I primarily deal with their Estates line, but I would think of it as Estates is their high-end line or their flagship product, but then they have one that's more economical. Although, while it's economical, it still shares a lot of commonality with the Estates line, and in particular, that would be very high-quality fit and finish on the product, but it's not as high caliber in terms of the platform of the lock sets. You're not going to get mortise locks when it comes to Reserve, but it will certainly be more approachable in terms of cost. So this is the Reserve Rustic Deadbolt, and in the 481 finish. 481 is what they just simply call dark bronze. This can also be done in a white bronze finish as well. So both of those finishes. Now, let's take a look at what we're dealing with. The SC, that's going to be a square. So the shape of the escutcheon on both sides is square. And Baldwin does a really nice job with these concealed cylinders. You can obviously get this on a concealed cylinder on this deadbolt, but also on their Estates lines. You can literally put a cover over a cylinder to a mortise lock. You may have an entrance grip handle or whatever sort of sectional trim. You can get a cover for a dust cover for your cylinder as well. Okay, so this would be the exterior escutcheon. Overall height, about 3 1/16 or so. Overall width, about 2 1/2. Overall projection from the face of the door, it looks like it's about 1 inch. Okay. This deadbolt is heavy, by the way. It weighs about 2.43 pounds. 2.43. Here is the inside thumb turn, being a single cylinder. Stand by. Okay. Nice smooth action based on those two springs that are there. The size of the inside or interior escutcheon, about 2 5/8 by 2 5/8 or so. Overall projection, about 1 3/8. Let's get to the cylinder. This would be kind of what looks like a standard rim cylinder in terms of its platform, except that the tailpiece will be this D shape, which is common. You'll see a D-shaped tailpiece on other products, and I'm quite sure that Baldwin and Kwikset are owned by the same umbrella company or mother company. I think they're called Spectrum brands, and you'll see that D-shaped tailpiece in Kwikset locks. So as we think about that and think about the Reserve line and it being more, I wouldn't say entry-level. It's definitely not entry-level material, but more economical. Very smooth operation out of this. This would probably be just die-cast zinc for the cylinder. This will have the classic Baldwin large bow key blank. This will be in the Schlage C keyway, or what they call an 03. That 03 is definitely a Schlage C keyway. They have numbers to indicate that, but it's a Schlage C. I know Baldwin can do one or two other keyways, probably E would be my guess, and they may do an F. They can do a C and an E for sure. I've never seen a Baldwin anything other than a Schlage C keyway. Let's take a look here now as I study the extended description of this item. And we're going to jump to it as well. Solid forged brass construction. That's going to be a reference to the exterior trim. Other than that, I don't think anything else has the potential for being brass. Forged is a high-quality method of manufacturing that would be certainly, it is considered superior to cast. And it's because they, from what I have learned, that they can get a higher caliber finish out of the forging process in terms of the finished or final product. Shown in a single cylinder, that means there's a cylinder on one side and then a thumb turn on the other. You could do a double cylinder, but that would have this plate on both sides. Admittedly, I don't know if the cylinder is concealed on both sides. I would think that it is, but it may not be. Got it. Okay. I had to take a look and see how something was assembled. White bronze or dark bronze are available. Features a 1-inch throw latch. One nice thing about Baldwin and this residential type of line is that it is adjustable. You're going to be able to do this in 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. 1-inch throw is very typical and common in these types of applications. Brass throw bolt with a hardened steel roll pin for added strength and security. So inside of here is going to be an inserted piece of steel that will help help deter, sawzall attacks, pneumatic, cutting wheel attacks, things of that nature. Features low profile cylinder projection, reasonably so. I mean, it will certainly stick off the face of the door less than other deadbolts, but it's still a sizable projection, and I think it was about 1 inch. Accommodates door thicknesses from 1 3/4 to 2 inch out of the box. 2.5 inch can be done, but you've got to order the service kit for that. It's just a minor add-on, and what's going to really happen there is a couple of things. The bolts that hold everything together will get longer, as will the tailpiece. Most likely, the tailpiece will get longer as well, would be my guess. I don't know that. Something gets longer. It's going to require a 2 1/8 inch crossbore with a 1-inch hole in the center, or the edge of the door, forgive me. A Baldwin 5-pin C keyway standard. This is available as a smart rekey technology, and the rekey, or the smart technology from Quickset, Deadbolt, Baldwin, obviously, is where you're able to... don't quote me on the steps. I think you put your key in, you turn it 90 degrees, you insert your smart key, your little tool, pull the key out, put the new key in, turn it a couple of times, like this, and voila, you have a different key operating that lock. Very fascinating technology, however, that is behind those cylinders, in that they are not a pin tumbler cylinder that we all think of the pin tumbler construction when it comes to cylinder platforms. But there's a sidebar involved, there are L pins involved, and the seating of the sidebar into the serrations on the side of the L pin, and I'm mucking this up because I haven't taken one apart in a while, is basically how it works, because you'll insert your key, or maybe you don't rotate it, don't quote me, you insert the smart tool, and then that will set your, that basically, I believe, moves that assembly out of the way of it actually operating, and when you insert your new key, it's then ready to receive a repositioning of the sidebar and the serrations in the side of the L pin. I believe that's how it works. 2 3/8 or 2 3/4 adjustable, single or double cylinder, 25-year mechanical finish warranty, limited lifetime mechanical warranty, 25-year warranty on the finish. Speaking of the warranty of Baldwin items, they are superb. Period. End of sentence. No one approaches Baldwin, and I say that because I've called Baldwin, and I've, on behalf of a client, and said, the client has an Images lock. You folks discontinued it a few years ago. He has a problem with a latch bolt. Very often what I hear is Baldwin saying, give me their address, we're going to ship them one out at no charge. They love it. They love to do it. They are incredibly customer oriented. I had a client needed to order about $1,200 of mortise locks from Baldwin. Built in about 1977, a home in New England, colonial sort of construction, maybe outside of Boston. I think it was. So why do you need these 2 locks? The client sent me pictures. This is what we need to match. Yeah, one of them just doesn't operate anymore. Okay, well, sure, we can sell you 2 new locks, and the other one was fine. They just wanted them to match. and one was failing. And he's like, yeah, it's a broken spring. I says, let's hold on there a minute. Got the client to, and they're a distributor, so they weren't scared about necessarily removing the lock from the door. Got the cover off, took a picture of the interior, and could clearly see that the spring had crystallized and failed over 4 decades of use. I called Baldwin. The first person I spoke to in tech support asked me a question. Is the color of the case blue? Yes. And that is a typical color for Baldwin mortise lock cases from the 1970s. He says, yep. I could have been working on the production line when that exact lock was made. I know what spring broke, and I know what I can send you at no charge that will fix the problem. Sent that no-charge spring to the client. They put it in. Perfect. We don't discourage. In fact, we encourage, sales of, $600 mortise locks. But we also encourage doing things the way that it advocates on behalf of the end user. Most absolutely. Being in alignment with the way that Baldwin sees it as well. So phenomenal technical support. Let's just go over the other parts that I may not have touched on. Regarding the latch bolt, you can do this 3 ways. You can do it with a 1-inch wide face with square corners, okay, 2 1/4 by 1 inch. You can do that same plate with a radiused corner. That would be a 1/4 inch radius. You can do all of that with a drive-in style latch. And this will, you're going to have to pry this plate off, and then you'll stick this drive-in latch down over it. So it can be done 6 ways, and that's what the 6 stands for on the box. 6L Y6, 3 at 2 3/4, 3 at 2 3/8. So there's 3 faceplate options, just 2 back sets. That covers the latch bolt. Let's go to the strike plates. There are 2 that are included. They're both 2 3/4 by, I think, 1 1/8. Yeah, spot on. 2 1/4. Oh, pardon me, 2 3/4. That's square corner. The same one, radiused corner. Again, 1/4 inch radius. I don't love the way that they've done this. I would prefer there to be a security backer behind it, but they're probably looking to make this as inexpensive as possible. 4 holes, 2 larger and 2 are smaller. The 2 larger are for these really long screws, and then the smaller ones, or the smaller holes, are for the shorter screws. Now, why is this the case? Well, the reason that that's the case is, and I will show you when we switch to the screen view, you need these long screws to sink into the stud that's, hopefully the stud that's behind the frame. You're going to have a mounting plate, and I'm going to show you that when we get to the installation instructions. You're going to have a shim. You're going to put that shim underneath or on the back of the rim cylinder. You just need to put it there. It goes in so that the face of the cylinder is flush with this. Without that plastic shim, it's not going to be flush. Will it still work? Probably. Do you want the cylinder to be flush? Yes, you do. So you'll put that on there just like I've got shown. A couple of small screws that you are going to need potentially for your latch bolt. That covers all the components in the package. Let's switch to the screen view and take a deeper dive. Okay, let's take a closer look at this. That's what the edge of the box looks like, or at least on this order. Dark bronze, square, rustic, single deadbolt, 481 finish, 6-option latch. That's what all the parts look like. Yeah, they're all there. 3 faceplates, interior, exterior, cylinder. The 2 machine bolts that will go through the interior, through the lock to the back side of the rim cylinder. Your 2 strikes, the 4 screws for that, the 2 screws for the latch bolt, and your little shim. Exterior and interior trim. Latch bolt. Yeah, right. Your cylinder. That's what would be called a direct code, where the bitting is actually engraved on the key itself. These numbers would correlate to how these cuts have been made. Your C keyway. It's where the bolts go into. Your 2 strike plates. And we're going to go over why you have long screws and shorter screws. And then your mounting package, basically, part of it. Let's go over why we would have such things on those strikes. So a... Oops. So a deadbolt... So here's a typical, single rabbet frame. Let's say that your door swings in. You're going to have your lock here. Okay. Your latch bolt is obviously going to come here. You're going to have your strike. You get the concept. Well, in typical construction, you're going to have your wood stud. You're going to have a double wood stud, which is best practice when it comes to construction. Now, if you recall, actually we don't need to recall, we can just take a look at big hole, little hole, big hole, little hole. Doesn't matter, you can just flip it over. But what we were driving at there was the big hole is where you're going to want those longer screws to get into the stud, whereas the shorter screws will miss the stud. It is important to note that the length of the longer screw is 1.5 inches. So be mindful. You've got to have a frame that will, it's very, what I'm driving at is very likely your screw is going to pierce through the back of that frame. Now with the longer screw, and that length of that screw is 3 inch, you're going to need to put the larger screw, okay, the larger screw prep towards the stop face, towards this side. That's where that's going to go, so that you can get that sunk into the studs that are there. And be mindful to very absolutely pre-drill the hole correctly. You're going to want to measure the root diameter of the screw and make sure that you're not splitting anything, or that you're not in a position where you can't drive the screw and sink the screw all the way into where it has to go. Softwood, if you're drilling through softwood, they would tell us probably about 75% of the root diameter, and then if it's a hardwood, maybe 85% of the root diameter of the screw itself, not the outside diameter. But that's why you have those longer screws and the shorter ones, and that's exactly why those are there. Now, the manufacturer's page is here, and this is the data here that is not only below this video, but what we've already just gone over. Moving forward, let's look at the drilling instructions, and I won't go through the steps of how to prep the door, how to drill it. Suffice it to say, this document is listed down below, and if you have any questions on how to prep your door, feel free to reach out. I will be happy to walk you through the steps. Then there are the installation instructions for the deadbolt, for the reserve line of deadbolts, and it is a fairly generic document. To be sure, there's no doubt about that. This is not exactly the Rustic model that we have, but no, never mind really on that. Template is also included here, and I'm just taking a quick scan of everything here. Looks like, what are we dealing with? 2 different languages? Okay, so there's 2 pages here. One of the 2 you probably won't refer to. Latch bolt's going to go in first. You're going to set that to 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. You're going to make sure that that fits into the edge of the door, and then you're going to apply the faceplate as according to your application. If you have to go with a drive-in latch, you're going to remove the back plate here. Okay, latch bolt's got to be in. Then at this point, it's super simple. Now you'll note they're showing that they want you to install it with the bolt thrown. That's pretty common. You'll find that when the bolt is thrown, it's pretty difficult to get the lock to not work correctly, meaning it doesn't. The key does not allow you to throw and retract the bolt, and permitting you to retrieve the key from the cylinder in both instances. Throw the deadbolt, and then at that point, you're going to put the D-shape prep through the latch bolt. You can see that that reinforcer goes behind your square trim, and it will fit. Your little plastic shim goes underneath the head. At that point, you're going to force the thumb turn to mate to the lock that you have. Okay, and the orientation of the letter D is rotated counterclockwise 90 degrees. Not really shown here at, well, is it? Let's look. Yeah, it's not really shown in here, but what that will need to look like when you have your latch bolt, okay, is that that letter D needs to be on its end. Okay, so take the letter D and then rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees, make it look like that. And you'll find that there's only one way for the thumb turn to go on as well. Now, what I don't like about the way that this is done is I normally think of a thumb turn when it's vertical as unlocked, and I normally think of a thumb turn that's horizontal as locked. You know, when the thumb turn and the bolt are parallel, it's just how I think of it, and that's the way that I would expect it to work. Although that is not the case. The question becomes is, can you install it that way? Yeah, I would also prefer it to be the opposite way, horizontal, because when your bolt is locked, you do have technically you have access to the head of those screws. If that was horizontal, that thumb turn, you would not really have access to that at all. Let's take a look. Now, just as a matter of, flogging that to the end, you could simply install the latch bolt retracted, and it will put the D on its side like this. You would then install it with this horizontal, and the lock will work correctly. If it was me, I'd install it that way. And the reason is because I was taught that way by, being a multi-generation family in this industry. I was taught that way to think of a deadbolt that you can visually identify from across the room, whether it's locked or unlocked. And we just think of that thumb turn as horizontal. Plus, it does give you the advantage of covering those holes. We did talk about how to sink those screws. 1/8 of an inch pilot holes may be required. What they're mean to say there, if pilot holes are not already drilled, you're going to have to drill. They're saying 1/8 of an inch. I won't question that at all. They've obviously tested it. Okay, so they're going to allow us to put this. They're saying that this will work on an 1.5-inch hole. I'm going to go no on that. Can it work? Sure. Should you install it that way? I would say no. You shouldn't. Because if you put it onto an 1.5-inch hole, you're not going to be able to use... You try to install it, you won't get this reinforcer that's there. And this preparation in the reinforcer, if we were to switch back to... there it is. Let's just go back to it. That latch bolt's going to kind of sit in this area here and here. Without this, yeah, you're not going to have that anti-rotation sort of concept happening. Okay, moving forward, if you needed to service the cylinder at all, you would remove this clip. If you do a service kit where you're going onto a thicker door, you will have to remove that clip to put on a longer tailpiece. And longer screws. Okay, so I was right. Both pieces get longer. And then it's just the template. The edge of the door to the center of the hole roughly is 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. Page 2 is in Spanish, I think. Maybe not. Yeah, I think it is. No, I think it is. I'm not. I'm not sure what language that is. Doesn't look completely like Spanish. Whatever. It's all good. If you need it in another language, I can probably accommodate that as well. So that covers the documentation that's down below. A simple, easy, straightforward deadbolt to install, and one that we're partial to here. Let's wrap up this video on camera. And then to add on to the end, we know when that collar is going to fit inside of here, that's going to be for a 2 1/8 inch hole only. If you try to put that onto an 1.5 inch hole, it's certainly going to work, but there would be nothing from really preventing this from turning over time. Sure, the screws go through the latch bolt, but you're going to be able to torque that a little bit. So, could you do it? You could. Should you do it? I would say no. I don't think that you should install this onto an 1.5 inch prepped hole. Even though I would think all they need to do is to give a modified plate. They should be able to do that. Well, yeah, I would think a second modified version of this. Now, back to what I was saying earlier about the installing this. So if I have this retracted, my D is now laying on its side. Well, it'd look like that correct way to you. I could install my exterior bolt. I could then take my thumb turn and put it with the thumb turn horizontally. Okay. From here, I can operate the lock. Okay. I can put my key in, and I'll be able to retract it, pull the key out, throw it, pull the key out. So, let's back that up a minute. I did that the opposite way. Yeah, let's take a closer look here now. And unfortunately, that's not going to work. When I had initially put it together, I had my thumb turned vertically this way, and I got the impression it would work. Unfortunately, we can't retime the female portion to the thumb turn. It's all one piece. There's a Wald's ring that's in there that can be removed, but that would just serve to remove the thumb piece. So sorry about going through all of that. I would prefer if the design was changed to accommodate my wishes, but lo and behold, it shall not work that way. So you're going to have that deadbolt working exactly the way the installation instructions call out. Unfortunately. That's unlocked. That's locked. Okay. I don't believe there's anything else to discuss on this at all. I guess the other thing to just show you was with that shim, when that goes into the exterior escutcheon, it's going to be nice and flush. Without it, that's going to set in about 100,000ths of an inch. You don't want that. Okay. Now, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Baldwin products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I would encourage you to review their line of material and very much their website. When it comes to their website, is a good way to look at all of the different finishes that Baldwin has. There are no PDF catalogs there that are easy to get our hands on sometimes. That's not a price book. The website is very helpful, however, when you want to just see very high quality images of the finishes. Baldwin does it the way that manufacturers did 100 years ago, where they had codes that apply only to Baldwin finishes. You know, there is no standardized 481 finish. That's a Baldwin finish. There is no reference to a BHMA code that will give you a 481 finish. So the point of that is, when you're dealing with Baldwin on some of their finishes that don't match up to other standard finishes from other manufacturers, I believe it's a way to keep you within their universe when it comes to matching hinges and other hardware, maybe window hardware, trim hardware that you might have on doors other than swinging doors. And that is certainly what was happening 100 plus years ago, where every manufacturer had their own finish. However, these other manufacturers, your Sargents, your Corbins, your Yales, they made much of the finish hardware that you would put into a house. You know, hinges, they made lock sets, they made window hardware, they made other items that you were going to end up seeing in a home, so that you could, if you fell in love with a particular finish from that manufacturer, you weren't necessarily stuck in getting hinges that wouldn't match. If you like this company's lock but this company's finish hardware and they did not have an equal finish, you needed to make a choice. And that is indeed the case with Baldwin. But they have a comprehensive offering where, if you're staying within the standardized finishes, you'll be able to match everything that Baldwin makes. And a lot of people don't realize that Baldwin makes things other than locks. They have mortise bolts. They have hardware for sliding doors. They have Dutch door quadrants. They have, other items, kick plates, and certainly hinges. So you'll be able to tie all of those finishes together. If you have any questions on the Baldwin, this is their, what is this? Their SC RSD 481 or any other Baldwin product. Please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching. And if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.